I believe that today would be great to dive into the subject of exploring how we can overcome conflicting ideas, conflicting values, conflicting beliefs in our system. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of people struggle and suffer and experience internal turmoil or don't experience inner peace. Wouldn't it be something helpful to experience inner peace?
Absolutely.
Great. Well, if you're all for inner peace, that is going to be the subject of our exploration today. So let me ask you, first of all, what is inner peace? How do you know that you experience inner peace? How would you be able to tell apart the time when you experience inner peace versus when you don't? Any ideas?
Well, I don't want to be the only one responding. We don't have a big crowd here, but I'll start.
Okay.
How I know that I have inner peace is I am not, my brain is not having this massive dialogue about what is wrong and I need to fix. My energy seems to be just in the moment and handling the process of life, without fretting and all of that.
Yeah. So how can you tell apart when you're fretting versus when you're not fretting? Like, what are the symptoms of that?
Well, the way my body feels, if I'm fretting, there is a tension, kind of a tightening down and a shallow breathing. And it's harder to stay consistently focused on resolving whatever task I am on because the brain is bouncing around.
Brilliant. So in other words, there are certain ways to tell when you experience inner peace and when you don't, when you are fretting and when you don't. And most importantly, it's something that can be measured, or at least use your physical body to tell whether or not you are in peace. And so how do we develop, let me go any further with questioning other participants today. Anyone else would like to share how you can tell apart when you experience inner peace and when you don't, besides what Marsha just shared? Shanti, please.
I think the first thing is I noticed the breath and then the tightening of muscles, physiology, and breath. I think breath is the first thing for me. Noticing shortened breath and then trying to deepen my breathing to relax.
Well, that's interesting. If you consider that breath is like a gauge that tells you how much inner peace you experience, then it's like driving a car and looking at the dashboard. And there are gauges showing how fast you're going, how fast your engine is working, and so on and so forth. So if you're going a little bit too fast and the speedometer shows that you're going beyond the speed limit or beyond how fast you would care to go, you don't just start banging on the speedometer or trying to fix it, screwed maybe with a little screwdriver to adjust it so that it would show the correct speed, regardless of how fast you're traveling, right? It would be kind of silly. You want to have a correct assessment of how far you're traveling, which speedometer provides if you don't mess with the speedometer. Well, so that's exactly why we don't want to mess with the gauge. If we're using our breath as a gauge, then perhaps we can continue using our breath as a gauge and do whatever needs to be done so that our breathing would become deeper and smoother. In other words, the cause and effect, it's that the loss of inner peace is what causes the breathing to become erratic or stressed. And as you correctly pointed it out, we can tell when we're not in inner peace if we're breathing in a way that feels shallow or rapid or chest breathing. That's a really good observation. Now, if we continue using the same line of reasoning, we also recognize that it's not the breathing that we need to fix. We need to fix the inner peace. And then the breathing will naturally confirm that we've achieved inner peace when it changes to become deeper and smoother and more harmonious. So that is one of the simple but misunderstood principles about breathing, that we don't want to mess with the gauge. We want to continue using the gauge. Now, we need to understand what is it that causes the loss of inner peace, or what is it that causes the internal turmoil or distress or inner conflict. Well, that's exactly what would allow us to achieve inner peace and thereby change our breathing, if we address the root cause of what caused the turmoil. Well, what do you think interferes with our inner peace? Or what do you think might cause us internal conflicts? Any ideas? Any suggestions? Shanti, please.
Our looping thoughts is the thoughts, right? The monkey mind.
Exactly. The monkey mind. Yes. And the monkey mind is not something that somebody does to us. It's not the monkey on our back that does our monkey mind to us. It's us and our mind that is responsible for our thoughts. Right? Nobody does thoughts to us. We do thoughts to ourselves, essentially. Just like tension, just like breathing, just like all the other things that we talk about. Well, if we are in charge of our own thoughts, that would stand to reason to start looking at how is it that we can perhaps address our thoughts in such a way that they would be less stress-inducing. In other words, how is it that we can address our consciousness so that it would experience inner peace? Well, one of the main reasons why we experience internal conflicts is simply because we do have conflicts of interests within ourselves. In other words, many people often experience some conflicting values or beliefs or desires. One pulling the person in one direction, other pulling the person in another direction, and then the person feels like they're being pulled apart or they're falling apart. And that is exactly what we want to learn how to mitigate or transcend. We basically want to stop experiencing this kind of polarized, dualistic thoughts. Well, the problem with that is that these dualistic thoughts happen for a very obvious reason. We have a variety of different interests. We have a variety of different perspectives on things. And some of these perspectives may be in conflict with each other. Some of the values, some of the beliefs that we have may actually pull us in different directions. And so that would actually invite us to start working on our beliefs and values in such a way that we would reconcile these type of polarizing perspectives. In other words, we would no longer have the values or beliefs pulling us in different directions or conflicting with each other within our own consciousness. Well, that would be really nice, wouldn't it? Well, that's exactly what I wanted to offer today. A way to resolve inner conflicts between certain beliefs or values or attitudes or desires. And once we reconcile these discrepancies, something really amazing happens. We stop the inner warfare. The internal conflicts no longer take all the energy that they used to. we actually experience inner peace. We actually stop wasting our resources on this internal warfare. And in order to achieve that, it's important to recognize what those conflicting values or beliefs are. In other words, if we don't know what they are, how are we going to reconcile them? So that's exactly why it's so important to know what our values are. And that is the preliminary practice that I would like to invite you to do today with me. If you don't mind, perhaps you can grab a piece of paper and pen, or if you want to, you can even use your computer and type. And basically what I invite you to do is simply create a short list of values and potentially also beliefs that you may have. It doesn't have to be really long. Just a dozen of values and beliefs would probably suffice for today. Obviously, you may have more than that. It's just simply we're going to do a short version of this exercise. When I work with my coaching clients, we go a lot further in depth in understanding values and beliefs and making sure that they're reconciled. But today we're going to do a brief kind of a sample of this exercise. So take a moment, maybe take a minute or two to jot down any values or beliefs that come to mind. They may not be following a logical sequence from the most important on top of the list to less important on the bottom of the list, because it's likely that you will recall some values that you may have first that may not even be top priority value. That's okay. What we'll do next is we will reevaluate our values, something that most people never do in their entire lives. We are going to reevaluate our values because that will allow us to see what values are really of higher priority and what values are not as important to us. How would you know which values are more important, which ones are less important? Well, you can just imagine letting go of all the values except for just one. If you could only have one value, it's like some people do this mental exercise. They say, well, imagine that your house is on fire and you have a chance to rescue only one thing out of your entire household. What would that be? Well, that's kind of similar approach that we're taking to our value rescue. We will only rescue one most important value. If that value is not currently on top of your list of priorities, feel free to put it on top of that list. Or just draw an arrow pointing that it should be on top of the list. Yeah, take a moment to assess your values and identify the one that feels like would be the most crucial, most important value for you. And once you've done that, I invite you to exclude this value for a moment and imagine that, again, you have to choose only one top priority value, except the one that you already picked is excluded from the list. So from the rest of the list, what is the second most important value? Again, take a minute to identify the most important value, most important belief or attitude that you may have. And then put it on top of the list second, right below the top priority. In other words, what we're doing right now is we are reprioritizing our values according to what is really, truly most important to you. Now, you can continue doing this with your list till you complete the reorganization of the values, evaluate your values, so to speak. But just having two values, the number one and number two, already enough, because some of you may experience that these values are not perfectly in alignment. They may be somewhat divergent. Some value, for example, of, let's say, personal development may be a high priority value, and another one may be social contribution. Well, not always will social contribution and personal development go hand in hand. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Same may apply to a lot of other values. For example, you may have value of health as your top priority value, and maybe another value of success. Well, if success and health don't always go hand in hand, no wonder there is such thing as burnout or stress at work or a lack of life-work balance and things like that. So in other words, most people experience some discrepancies between their top priority values. How do we reconcile these discrepancies? Any ideas? Any suggestions? Feel free to unmute yourself and share if you have any suggestions on how we might be able to reconcile the discrepancies between the values. No ideas? Shanti, thank you for being so active today. Yes, please.
How about by examining our beliefs around each of these values? What do we believe about it? And being honest with our answers.
That might work really well. So obviously we are working on reorganizing and rediscovering how to work with establishing inner peace by reconciling any discrepancies between the values. And so I agree that it would be nice to perhaps analyze the values and see, well, what is it that I believe about them that makes me think or makes me feel like they're not in alignment? Well, that is a nice approach. It may take a while. I have a shortcut. Would you like me to share the shortcut today? This shortcut is an amazingly effective energy practice dedicated specifically to harmonizing polarities in terms of values or beliefs or different other options or different other opinions. You can use this practice for reconciling polarizing beliefs in your own consciousness or even in consciousness of groups of people or even entire nations. But we, of course, want to work with ourselves first. So, as the first step in this exercise, I invite you to just hold your two hands out like so. You can stand or you can sit. I always prefer doing it standing, but right now we might as well just do it sitting. That's totally fine. On the palm of your right hand, let's gather the value that you first worked on, that you identified as the number one priority. And see how you can gather energy associated with that value. Whatever energy might be associated with that value, let's gather as much of it as you can on the palm of your right hand. You may imagine, for example, connecting with that value within yourself, tapping into the resource of that energy within yourself, and just gathering the energy on the palm of your right hand. Once you've done that, by way of contrast, let's gather the energy associated with the number two priority value on the palm of your left hand. Again, you can visualize or imagine tapping into their source of energy in your consciousness or in your body, associated with the second top value in your system of beliefs or values, and gather that energy in the palm of your left hand. So now you are actually connecting with two seemingly distinct and maybe even potentially contradictory values or beliefs. That's fine. We're going to work on creating harmony between them. And we don't even have to work hard. We just allow these energies to communicate between each other. Just imagine that these two energy fields manage to communicate either directly from one palm to the other or through the medium of your body, using your arms and your torso as a medium, as the conduit for this energy exchange. And as they exchange whatever they need to exchange, share whatever they need to share, something really amazing is going to start happening. They begin to understand each other better. They may begin to appreciate what the other has to offer. At times, there may be some dialogue going on between them. And as this dialogue unfolds, you may feel your energies animating your hands. That's right. It's a dynamic meditation. We can actually allow these energies to move our hands, starting with the fingers, and then wrists, and forearms, and entire arms, maybe even shoulders, maybe even the whole torso. Even your neck and your head and the entire spine may also get involved, as these energies may begin to move in spontaneous and unpredictable ways as they continue exchanging with each other whatever they need to share with each other and learning whatever they need to learn from each other. Take a minute or two to really allow these energies to express themselves, either through movements or through other means. If your hands start moving, or arms or your whole body begins to be animated by these energies, that's totally normal. That's what this practice is about. Just allow them to follow this flow as the energies guide your hands in the spontaneous expression, continuing to exchange whatever they need to share with each other and learning from each other whatever they need to learn. At some point, you may notice that your hands begin to turn in such a way that they're facing each other more directly. And if those energy fields that you held in your hands start to interact with each other more directly, they may even start mixing with each other in a more unified energy field. Feel free to allow that process to unfold more fully. Isn't it interesting how the energies always know how to facilitate this experience without us trying to analyze it or consciously direct a movement? Just allow the hands and your arms and your whole body to be moved by the energy. And as this process unfolds more completely, you will notice that these two seemingly polarized energy fields that you started with now begin to comprise a more unified field of energy that you're holding onto with both heavy hands. As you're doing this, you may also experience your breathing patterns may change. You may even have a sigh of relief or start yawning, which is totally normal. That's what happens when you let go of inner tension or inner conflict. We're just exploring how breathing can serve as a gauge of inner peace. Well, if you feel like your breathing is getting deeper and smoother, or elicit sigh of relief or yawn, that's a pretty clear indication that you are getting the benefit of this practice that we are doing it for. So whenever you're ready, hold on to this unified energy field with both of your hands and breathe in as much air as you can into your lungs, lifting this energy above your head. And then breathe out completely, creating vacuum inside of you. And then let this energy fill the space inside of you, going wherever it needs to go in your body, finding the most proper home inside of your body or anywhere around it. By doing so, we learn to embody that energetic state of integration and inner peace. All right. Well, I certainly got into a nice altered state of mind. Even my eyes started to water. I don't know about you. Feel free to unmute yourself and share if you experienced any interesting breakthroughs or a sense of unification of whatever divergent beliefs or values you might used to have. Did anyone experience anything worth sharing? Feel free to unmute yourself and speak up.
This is Matthew. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Oh, great. I definitely didn't get as much movement going externally, but I found that I was holding a lot of tension in the wrists. And once the neck and the shoulders started to release, then the hands started to move. I could feel that weight building on it kind of merge together, almost like an arc or a rainbow. And then the breathing got easier. So yeah, I had the eyes watering too, but I had a lot of resistance, but it was interesting.
Fantastic. So isn't it interesting how you don't have to struggle with resistance? You don't have to try to fix it or get rid of it. Yes, there is resistance. Resistance is futile because the energy will find a way to flow where it needs to flow. And yeah, there may be some divergent beliefs or attitudes that may be also causing us some internal tension. Tension is frozen movement. So if at first there wasn't much movement happening, like you said, that's probably why we're doing this practice, because we need it. And then something interesting happens. As you become less tense, the movements start flowing more freely and the breathing frees up. That's what we were talking about in the very beginning of our coaching session today. We want to use our breath as the gauge that would enable us to actually assess how well we are in the flow. We don't want to just manipulate our breathing because we don't want to mess with our gauge. We don't want to actually make the gauge give us wrong results. We want it to be trustworthy. And in order to do that, We want to actually allow what's natural to unfold spontaneously. Makes sense, right? Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing, Matthew. Did anyone else experience any interesting sensations or experiences? Feel free to unmute yourself and speak up.
What I noticed was I had a short list of values that were there. They were the things that came right to the top when you first made the request.
Yeah.
But as I began, holding one and another in my hands, I got more detail about those values. I started out with the word order and the idea of productivity. So my first thought was, they're not really in conflict with each other. What would the conflict be? And these words that came up was in the idea of order, followed by that was structure, and then predictability and a sense of control, self-control of my world. And then when I look at one of my other words was independence. And so that showed up like freedom and self-reliance. And then I could start to see where there was kind of this resistance that structure and control and freedom and independence kind of have this not exactly the same thing energy to them. So just holding it gave me more detail as to what was in the background that was in the tension. And then recognizing that those things come together quite nicely when you let them, because controlling my world based on my value is that I have the freedom to be self-reliant and bring on my own productivity. So that was my 3 elements kind of all came together. So it was letting more information come up as I held on to the different energy fields and that brought them together.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Marcia, for sharing this. Yeah, this is brilliant. And just to reiterate what you just said, let me share with you something about ancient Greek philosophy. Ancient Greeks believed that there used to be primordial chaos, and then the gods and the powers that be organized it into what they called cosmos. So cosmos is essentially a structured chaos, organized and fixed in a certain way that seems to be right. However, we also know that expression, the creative chaos. Creative chaos is essentially what happens when you're creating. It's not structured. It's really hard to be creative if everything is already in the box. It's already all compartmentalized. There needs to be some kind of flow of things happening in order for creativity to flow. Well, so if we don't fall into this mental trap of dualistic perspective that looks at everything and puts labels such as good or bad, then we will not do what most people tend to do, putting label good on the cosmos and bad on the chaos. And instead, we allow the energies of cosmos, which is associated with organization and structure on one hand, and energy of creative chaos on the other hand, to work out whatever differences they may have between each other, learn whatever they can learn from each other, and integrate the best of both worlds. Now, this would be like a dream come true for Greek philosophers if somebody gave them this type of practice. Unfortunately, nobody gave the Greek philosophers this particular practice. And so they never reconciled the dualistic a separation between the cosmos and chaos in their cosmology. Well, so luckily enough, now we have a little bit of a better toolbox, and we can literally reconcile the distinctions or polarized attitudes related to cosmos and chaos, or many other things like that that may coexist in our consciousness or in our world. Do you think that we will be living in greater state of inner peace when we do that? No doubt. Does this seem like a good practice that you would be able to do? You don't have to do it every day, but at least once or twice a week. I would encourage and implore you to put this practice to good use. Just once or twice a week may be a good start. I do this pretty much every day because even though I've been practicing this for many decades, I still sometimes run into some things that need to be reconciled, either within my own consciousness or in my environment or relationships with other people. This type of practice can reconcile pretty much anything. Why? Because it literally allows two seemingly polarized opposites to find a way to coexist. So one of the things that I used it for instance, is last year and also beginning of this year, you may recall there was a lot of strife about the politics, especially in America. You know, the Republicans and Democrats, they were at each other's throats. There was a lot of this polarized opinions, and they were literally tearing the fabric of society apart. That's what I did in my own consciousness so that I would reconcile some beliefs or some attitudes that perhaps were in alignment with one way of thinking, and perhaps some other beliefs and attitudes were in alignment with the other way of thinking. I don't need to have political turmoil inside of my consciousness. Thank you very much. That takes too much energy and creates inner warfare. I would much rather have inner peace. If you would like to have greater sense of inner peace and stop wasting energy on inner conflicts so that you can put it to better use, perhaps healing yourself, perhaps some creative projects, or sharing with other people, well, this is an excellent way to achieve exactly that. I see a note from Shanti. Thank you, Lama. This is a great practice. Yes, thank you, Shanti. I appreciate your appreciation. And I totally agree. This is a great practice. So I thoroughly enjoy it myself and invite you to put it to good use to improve your quality of life. Now, I want to act and open our clinic for discussions or Q&A. So if you have any questions about this particular practice or anything else you heard me mention, or perhaps you wished I mentioned but I didn't, feel free to speak up, ask me any questions. I will do my best answering them. This may be questions pertaining to meditation or energy practices, be it Qigong or other disciplines. This may be pertaining to coaching or how to improve certain aspect of your own life. Or perhaps you have some philosophical questions, and I'll be happy to help you sort them out. Well, any questions, folks? Marcia, you have a question?
Sort of a question. Say more about the situations that you can apply this practice to. Like, one of the thoughts that's kind of wandering in my head is, what if I don't have a real, can't identify a value that seems to be in conflict or in need of attention, but there's something in my external world that's giving me a message that says, hey, there's some tension. Like, I want to get a particular task done, but it just doesn't seem any motion is taking place in the direction of that. How I apply this, and not just that circumstance, but if you have other suggestions as to the types of circumstances where this practice would be of real value.
Excellent. This is a very good question. And the answer is actually really simple. You just have not identified the value that keeps you from moving in the direction where you think you want to move. In other words, if there is an energy moving in that direction and there is nothing resisting or pulling you elsewhere, nothing would stop you. You would just keep going in that direction. However, if you are spinning the wheels and not getting anywhere, it means there is some friction or potentially an energy pulling you in reverse, and you just haven't identified it yet. So this is an invitation to continue working on that short list and maybe make it not as short, maybe making it a little longer. And you can actually explore juxtapositions of values. So once you have a list that is longer than just a dozen items, including the various values and attitudes, you can actually play with juxtapositions. So how does this one work with that one? And you can literally go through this list, checking if there are any conflicts of interests. And this is something that will reveal at least one alternative value, or the value that is pulling you in some other direction and basically distracting you or diverting your attention or taking away your drive to move in the direction where you thought you wanted to go. Does it make sense?
Yes, that makes sense. And the key thing there was in the not knowing where the source of the resistance is, that's an opportunity to just explore further. And I got that exploring was happening after I started the exercise, as much as before the exercise. Like I had a little list before the exercise, but more just kept coming up, which was of real value. And then having the thought, well, anytime during the day, I've noticed these little moments of, you know, I'm going to say this like I'm the only one that has this experience, right? You get up to say, oh, I'm going to go to the mailbox. But before you get to the mailbox, you say, oh, there are all my shoes are in the floor. So you start to move the shoes and go, oh, that one needs to be vacuumed. So then you go find the vacuum and oh, it needs new bags in it. And then you think, oh, the trash needs to be emptied. I can't, you know, and 3 hours later, I still haven't made it to the mailbox. You know, like what's in the space that is causing that level of distraction and incompleteness with so many, some of you are smiling like you know what I'm talking about, you know, that leaves, you know, it's like I get to the end of the day and go, what did I get done? You know, a whole lot of half of things. And still, you know, so that's one, it seems like a simple and maybe not drastic area of life, but it leaves tension in the wake, you know, and trying to resolve those little things creates an opening for sensitivity to resolve the bigger things. You know, that's kind of what I'm hoping for, because the bigger things are looming, you know, they're much more intense. Yeah.
I like to share my experience because I'm laughing, right? Because I know I've been there. So as I'm laughing, I was like, what about the value of being focused in a sense of completion and bringing those two together? Oh, I'm feeling the energy as I speak of this, right? Focus and completion. So strong. Let those talk together, see what happens. And bring that sense of focus and completion. Feels so good. Wow. Do you feel the energy? I think I need that to focus and completion.
I think all of us would benefit from focus and completion.
I'm feeling a tremendous sense of energy flow through me.
Marvelous.
Ooh, thank you.
You are so welcome.
You just trying 2 words, right?
Yes.
And
And
what you know what I like to try?
Yeah.
Money and trust. Trusting myself with money and trust. What's the conflict here? Why is it I keep giving money out and it doesn't keep coming in? That'd be a good exercise for me. Because those are anyway.
this is a great practice to put to good use in terms of addressing any polarized or even somewhat conflicting. They don't have to be an open conflict, but somewhat, like one value may be just silently sabotaging the other value.
Mhm.
Pretty much what Marsha, you just shared, that there's basically some kind of silent sabotage or distraction. And so it may not feel like there is just a direct confrontation, but diverting the attention is enough to make you less productive. And so then some tasks basically don't reach any completion. How do we get to completion? Well, we're just working on focus. So focus actually can bring about completion, right? And that's something that actually can be also put integrated into this exercise. It's almost like first there is a split focus on 2 different energies, whatever these energies may be. But through the practice over time, these energies eventually coalesce and form a unified energy field. And that is exactly what allows us to experience the integration or reconciliation of seemingly polarized values or beliefs. So this is something that I definitely encourage you to experiment with, practice, and feel free to email me any stories about what you achieved or what you experienced. If you have any challenges, obviously you're welcome to share with me whatever challenges you've run into, and I will be happy to help you overcome those challenges. Also, everybody who is participating in our session today, you are welcome to request a complimentary coaching session, either from myself or from some of the apprentices of mine who are also practicing Qigong coaching. So either myself or one of my apprentices will actually be able to offer you a coaching session, during which you will be able to dive deeper into this practice one-on-one. And the first session will be free of charge. If you like what you received and you want more of it, well, obviously there's going to be a reasonable fee for that, but one session will be just free of charge. And you're welcome to request that either from myself or from some of my apprentices who are actually here today, or some of them who are not here, but they make themselves available. And before we wrap up, let me just ask you once again, do you have any questions or comments or something that you would care to share in regard to what we've explored today, or perhaps something that you wish we would explore? Perhaps you have some questions kind of outside of the scope of our current session, but maybe we will be able to spend a few minutes resolving those. Marsha? Yes.
I have one more thought to share. I would like to know from the group if this time of day and this day of week is like the best time. Is it easy for you to come at this time? Are there better hours or days? Because I know I get the best benefit from these clinics when there's a large group of people here. And, just kind of an informal survey of are we missing people because this isn't the best time? Maybe it's the time of year, but maybe in the chat or any place else, if you have a suggestion for best times, best days, that can help us create a bigger group.
Excellent. Yes, thank you for suggesting that, Marcia. Yeah, please take a moment to put in the chat whether or not this particular time, obviously in North America, it's Saturday morning or Saturday noon or close to noon. Well, on the East Coast, it's already close to 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
So you see there, Lama, someone wrote that today's link was wrong.
Well, yeah, the link didn't work. So when I pressed the link, the only way I got in was I could see the Zoom number attached on the top on the URL. So I just took that number and joined the call. So the link in the email didn't work.
Yeah, it
Oh,
didn't.
well. Okay, I thought I tested it, but I guess it didn't work. So thank you for finding your way here. I appreciate it. And of course, since we're recording today's session, as we normally do, I will also repost it in our Facebook group, and also will share the recording with other folks who perhaps wanted to attend but couldn't because of the link. Did anyone else have any issue with the link? Rima, you had an issue with the link? So you did the same thing, you copied?
I went to the website. I don't know what I did. I got in. I had a way. I figured it out, I guess. But no, the link on the email did not work. I tried it a bunch of times.
Okay, and I see that some folks say that this is a good time, convenient. Obviously, that's why you're here. So for those folks for whom it wasn't convenient, they're not here. And the question, how often these sessions are done, we try to do them every other week. Obviously, we didn't do it last week because it was the holiday, the 4th of July in America. In Canada, it was Canada Day. So we just simply postponed it and did it today. So in 2 weeks, we'll be meeting again. I look forward to seeing you in our future Qigong coaching clinics. We're going to have some serious fun exploring other applications and practices. If you receive a session between now and the next week, well, perhaps also you still can attend that coaching clinic in 2 weeks and share some of your experience. That's something that I believe many people would appreciate, and something that I personally appreciate because receiving feedback is very important for me. So I look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks. Until then, a wonderful time.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.